Resuming debate, the honourable member for Neutralité will have approximately 3 minutes, and he'll have the other 7 coming to him when the topic comes up again. The honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to applaud the member for Oakville's initiative on bringing forward a motion to defend net neutrality, and it gives me great pride to be able to second this motion. As has been noted already a number of times, the core concept of net neutrality already exists strongly in Canadian law without being specifically named. It is an important principle. Net neutrality is a significantly bigger issue than limiting the speed of Netflix, and I'm somebody who's quite sensitive to being asked to slow down. So it is also a far broader discussion than we give it credit for. I'll dive into all of that over the next few minutes and into next month, I suppose. At its core, net neutrality means that internet service providers and the backbone provider that the ISPs are connected to do not judge, limit, or control the content, speed, or nature of your internet traffic. Any packet, the basic unit of an internet connection, coming in is relayed to its destination, provided it meets basic security requirements. Net neutrality need not extend to blindly permitting distributed denial of service attacks, for example, nor the forwarding of packets to spoofed headers. Indeed, a DDoS is a third-party attack on neutrality by negatively affecting another service. But I digress. The point is, if you take away net neutrality, what you are taking away is a network provider's obligation to pass on a packet without judging it. So at its simplest, not having net neutrality means that any ISP can rate limit, which means selectively slow down a bandwidth-intensive service like Netflix without affecting the rest of your connection. And that is how the big internet service providers will sell this to you, as a fundamental question of fairness. It sounds reasonable. Netflix alone represents about 35% of internet traffic in North America today. It isn't, of course, actually reasonable. If an ISP is not capable of sustaining the capacity they have sold you, they have oversold it. And I'll come back to that next time this is up for debate in a few weeks. Unfortunately, this position by net neutrality opposing ISPs means that the provider is given the right to look at your traffic, a right they do not currently have except in aggregate. And once they have this right also comes with obligations. ISPs, for example, will no longer be able to claim neutrality if a customer is looking at illegal content. Good, you might say, but no, not necessarily good, and here's why. Once the ISP is required to monitor your traffic, because without neutrality they become effectively required to, because they can no longer claim they couldn't, should they be sued or charged, and is also no longer required to be neutral about the transmission of this traffic, the door is wide open for ISPs to decide what you can and cannot do on the internet. This, then, becomes a fundamental rights issue. Without net neutrality, there is nothing stopping Bell Canada, for example, the country's largest internet provider, one of 3 roughly equally large-sized cell phone providers, and the plurality owner of Canada's domestic content creation market, from limiting your internet access on your Bell Canada connection or phone to Bell Canada content, which includes CTV News, the mobile network, Crave TV, the sports network, and so forth, or preventing you from accessing, say, CBC content. In fact, they already do this to an extent. You cannot watch Discovery Channel online without a login to either a Bell service or a television provider that subscribes to it. They're clearly keen to have this power, and I'm looking forward to finishing this in a few weeks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member will have 7 minutes and 10 seconds coming to him when the topic comes up again.
Orders of the day, ordre du jour.
Private member's business, resuming debate on motion M168 concerning net neutrality, standing in the name of Mr. Oliver.
Resuming debate, reprise de débat. L'honorable député de Laurentides-Labelle a 7 minutes parce qu'il avait déjà commencé son discours auparavant. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to pick up where I left off on the important issue of net neutrality. We have all experienced the message, this content is not available in your country, where content distributors or creators use various technologies to figure out where you are and limit your access, to drive you to a different provider or place for that particular content, or to block you from it altogether. Indeed, a lot of Canadian-produced content is virtually impossible to access in Canada, while being available in much of the rest of the world. Try watching Canada's Mayday, for example, without a Bell account. It can't legally be done. It makes me wonder on what grounds vertical integration of the media market is legal. The neutrality of the net is under threat from all sides already, and it will take a concerted effort to protect it. Removing net neutrality gives the companies that control your internet access control over your internet content. And once you do that, companies can start shaping your opinions, tuning marketing, and selling access to you, the consumer, for a much reduced cost. With the current Cambridge Analytica controversy surrounding Facebook, themselves the king of those who control what you do, see, think, and feel on the internet, we can see that this is not just some kind of vague theory. It is important to remember that if you are not paying for a product, you are the product. This data gathering and control is not gathered and conducted just for the fun of it. Your data isn't being stored in a cloud, Madam Speaker. There is no cloud, just other people's computers, and they want your data for a reason. Without mandated net neutrality, there is nothing to stop a company from paying your ISP to increase access to their own services or decrease access to their competitors' services. And to my point last time I spoke on this about overselling internet connections, I don't have much sympathy for ISPs in that situation. And so the argument that net neutrality has to go because of capacity issues is spurious. In my view, ISPs should be required to market minimum, not maximum, sustained speed capability to their first peer outside of the network at typical peak usage times. ExploreNet, for example, markets 25 megabit satellite service, but won't tell you that for most customers, that only applies at 3 a.m. on a clear night with no northern lights, and even then only during the full moon. I may be exaggerating, but only a bit. It isn't that the satellites and ground stations can't handle an individual connection at that speed most of the time. It is that the connections are oversold, resulting in constant, bitter complaining in my riding from rural internet users who are stuck between the ExploreNet rock and the dial-up hard place. It isn't the service that bothers me. It is essential to have companies like ExploreNet provide service to remote regions that have no other options. We need it. It is the honesty about what the customer is getting for their money, what is advertised to them versus what they actually get. That needs to be rectified. The company justifies all this very carefully, and in my years in politics as a staffer and in this role, it is the only company I have ever encountered that only lobbies with their senior counsel present. I think that speaks for itself. The highly profitable telecommunication giant Bell, which broke $3 billion in profit in 2016 and built most of its infrastructure on public money in the first place, and Rogers, which made $1.8 billion in net profit last year, are upping their internet connection prices by as much as $8 per month per customer, but are not investing significantly in deep rural Canada unless they get gifts from various levels of government to do so. These companies and the other large internet providers won't even look at investing in a project unless they can get a return on investment in less than 3 years. I know of no other legal business that operates on quite such an efficient return on investment. Ce qui nous amène à un autre enjeu important dans la question de la neutralité de l'Internet, qui m'a été soulevée récemment par un défenseur professionnel des droits numériques. La neutralité de l'Internet peut et devrait aller encore plus loin, jusqu'à la neutralité de l'investissement. Ce n'est pas juste l'accès aux services d'Internet qui est important, c'est un accès égal ou au moins équivalent pour les utilisateurs de l'Internet. Choisir d'investir dans un réseau gigabit dans une ville et abandonner les régions à 5 mégabits n'est pas neutre. On limite les utilisateurs particuliers au lieu de limiter des services, mais le résultat est le même. Si on dit aux résidents des régions que nous n'avons pas d'accès pour vous, ce n'est pas Netflix qui est limité, c'est l'Internet au complet. C'est l'accès aux services, c'est l'accès à l'économie, c'est la participation dans la société moderne. Alors, nous ne pouvons pas dire que nous avons vraiment de la neutralité de l'Internet avant que nous avons aussi la neutralité de l'accès à l'Internet, qui prendra sûrement encore des milliards de dollars d'investissement pour tous les paliers et des secteurs privés. Imaginez pour un moment qu'on voyait l'accès à l'électricité à travers le même lancier qu'on utilise actuellement pour l'accès à l'Internet. Les régions ne seront toujours pas branchées au complet et les collectivités éloignées ne seraient tout simplement pas branchées s'ils n'avaient pas d'accès à une rivière pour installer un barrage, par exemple. Nous avons une responsabilité comme société, comme pays, d'assurer un accès neutre, d'investir de manière neutre, de donner à tout Canadien la chance de se brancher. Et ça va devoir impliquer de la participation des organismes gouvernementaux pour assurer cette égalité, comme on a fait dans ma circonscription de Laurentides-Labelle avec la coopérative de télécommunications d'Anton-Labelle. If you want to know what losing net neutrality looks like, try using an iPhone or an iPad, assuming Apple hasn't slowed it down yet to coax you to buy a new one. If you've ever plugged in your iPhone into your non-Apple laptop, or wanted to copy pictures to a USB stick, or watch something you paid for through iTunes on your Android, Windows, or other non-Apple device, it is very difficult to do. If you want to use an application not approved by Apple, forget it. It is, by its very definition and design, not neutral. And by giving themselves the power to censor, they have found themselves with the obligation to censor. In the words of Richard Stallman, the father of the free software movement, either the user controls the program or the program controls the user. Apple, like many American corporations, strives not only to sell you a product, but to control what you do with it after you purchase it, just like region-encoded DVDs and players, which in my view should not even be legal. In essence, nothing you have bought actually becomes yours, but rather you pay for the dubious privilege of becoming part of Apple's network. John Deere, the tractor and farm equipment maker, is jumping on this bandwagon too, claiming that it is against their copyright for farmers to fix their own equipment. The copyright issue and the DMCA and our equivalent Canadian Copyright Modernization Act effects relating to technological protection measures are a deeply worrying symptom of a wide-ranging offensive by corporate America against individual rights to use what people have bought and paid for. And if you think that has nothing to do with net neutrality, you would be mistaken. It is part of the same basic principle. If I buy a tractor, an iPhone, or an internet connection, I expect to be able to use it where, when, and how I see fit, even if it was not part of the original design of the product. Reverse engineering something you bought and running a Gopher server off your home internet connection, if you feel like being that retro, are, at their core, the same right. support or service blocking by ISPs is, to me, a violation of net neutrality, as is refusing to sell you a static IP address or letting you otherwise do what you want with that connection. Ending rather than entrenching net neutrality would end the internet as we know it. We need to make a strong statement supporting the principle of net neutrality by supporting this motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Hear, hear.